Okay, 2.5, solving rational equations. So what we're going to do here is we're going to solve for x. When you see solving an equal sign, you need to find x. The two different kinds we'll see. The first one we'll see is a a fraction equal to a fraction. And so if you look at number 1, that's the example of that. So over here on number 1, you will see that there are two fractions, okay, that equal to each other. And so when you do this, when you see this, to solve for that, you're going to cross multiply. Probably a mnemonic or a thing that you might have learned to talk about. It's called butterfly method, but cross multiply is what you'll do. And so what you'll do is you'll look at these and you'll say, oh, 8 times x equals 5 times x plus 3. And then we'll solve for x. X equals 15, x equals 5. Okay. Now, the second, number 2, is also a fraction equal to a fraction, but we're going to talk about something that's in there. So if we look at this denominator right here, we have an x minus 1. When you have a fraction, a variable in the denominator, you want to be careful because we have restrictions. And that's what that little note, watch out for domain restrictions in this box here. So what we want to do is, again, what you want to do is check. Let me just check for variables in the denominator. Okay. And so what that means is that if I look right here, I have an x minus 1, our denominator can never be equal to 0. So it can never be equal to 0. Okay? That can never happen. So when you have a variable in the denominator, you have to find out what will make that equal to 0. So if I look at this denominator here, and I have an x minus 1, and that means I will have to find what makes that a 0. So the best way to do this, if you're not too sure by just looking at it, because it may not always be that easy to look at, you're going to set that denominator equal to 0 and find that number. So I'm going to take x minus 1, put it over here, set it equal to 0, solve for x, and I get x1. So if I put 1 in here, 1 minus 1 is 0, so that means I can never have x be equal to 1. So with this x not equal to 1, that's my domain restriction. So you'll have to state that restriction and then do the work and then see if you'll have to check against that. So let's solve for this, x. Now again, this is a fraction equal to a fraction, so I can just multiply these two together and multiply these together. So I have x, doesn't matter which one is on what side, x minus 1 times x plus 4 equals a 2 times a 3, which is just 6. Okay, I'm solving for x, so that means I'm going to have to FOIL that left side, okay? So foiling depends on how you need to do that. I prefer to do the box method when I do this, so x minus 1, x plus 4. So in this box I have x squared, 1 times negative 1 times x is a negative x, 4 times x is 4x, 4 times negative 1 is a negative 4. So these two are combined. So I have x squared plus 3x minus 4 equals 6. Again, I'm solving for x. I got a quadratic. Remember, when you have a quadratic, you have to set it equal to 0 and factor. Okay, so I'm going to move the 6 over. And here I have x squared plus 3x minus 10 equals 0. Okay, so now we're going to factor. So in this first one, we get x minus 2x plus 5. Okay, so I'll set them equal to 0. X minus 2 equals 0. X plus 5 equals 0. So hope you've seen with that. So that means our x is equal to 2 and a negative 5. So what I want to do now is go look up here at my restriction. My restriction here is x equals 1, but neither one of these solutions is that, so therefore they're both fine. So that's our solution, that's our answer. So the next type of fractions or equations that we'll solve for that are rational is when we look at adding and subtracting on one side. So when we add and subtract on one side, what you want to do first is you want to eliminate the denominator. So eliminate the denominator. Okay. This is by multiplying every term by the LCD. And this is called clearing out your fractions. When I say clearing out the fractions, that means I don't have any. When I finish, I have no fractions when it comes time to solving. So let's look at that looks like, okay? Now, let's do number 3, and I'm gonna tell you what you have to state, okay? You must state here, I said I have to find the LCD, right? So I've got to multiply everything by the LCD, okay? But I also got to make sure to check, are there any domain restrictions? So we look for a variable in the denominator. So we look at number 3. This is not 2 equal fractions. So what I need to do is find the LCD and the domain restriction first. So let's do that. So the LCD between a 2x and a 3x, well, if I look at the numbers, 2 and 3, has to be a 6, and they both contain an x, so I need an x up here, okay? What is the domain restriction? Well, because I have an x in the denominator, what's going to make that 0? So my x cannot be equal to 0. If I put a 0 in here, 2 times 0 is 0. Cannot divide by a 0. So the next step is to multiply everything by the LCD. It's going to be a little bit different than what we were doing with solving, because we're not trying to create two fractions or put everything under one. We're not trying to create one fraction. We want to solve for x. So now what you do is multiply everything by the LCD. Everything. Every term by the LCD, okay? And what we want to do when you get done with this part is that after you cancel everything out, you have no fractions. So if I try to reduce this one, I have the x's reduced, 6 and 2 reduced by 3. There's a 3 there and a 1 there, so they're reduced by 2. So 3 times 3 is 9, minus, over here, get x is reduced. 3 and 6 are divided by 3. Minus 5 times 2 is 10, equals 12x. Now solve for x. So this is negative 1 equals 12x. Negative 1 divided by 12 equals x. Now this is not a 0, so therefore this is our solution. All right, let's look at the next one. Next one, same thing. First, we're going to find the LCD. Then we're going to talk about the domain restriction. So the LCD for here. Now, I'm going to have every part of this has to be in my LCD. I have to have an x, and I have to have an x plus 3. Okay, what is our domain restriction? What's going to make this down here equal 0? So x cannot be a 0 or a negative 3. So now what I want to do is multiply everything by the LCD. So x times x plus 3, x times x plus 3, and then x times x plus 3. So now just reduce, cancel. So I know that these x plus 3 reduces, so I have just a x. I know that this x reduces with this, so I have a plus 2 times x plus 3. And I know x and x cancel, and x plus 3 and this x plus 3. So all I have left over here is a negative 3. So now let's just solve for x by distributing. X minus 6, oops, 3x equals a negative 9, x equals negative 3. So now I have my solution. So now I need to go up and check my restriction. Okay, so see, we have a negative 3 here, and this is a negative 3. Okay, since that's a negative 3, that cannot work, so therefore that's no solution. So since this is a restriction, this doesn't work, so our answer is just no solution. Now I kind of want to come back in a little bit and make sure we remember about the different things we're looking at. So just kind of remember that when you are solving something that's linear, so linear, you're going to kind of do PEMDAS backwards, right? Going to add, subtract, multiply, divide. When you have a quadratic, you have to set it equal to 0, then factor. Just kind of remind us what we need to do when we do those things, okay? All right, let's go to number 5, okay? Number 5, I have 2 fractions and a whole number. So now what I'm going to do is find the LCD and find my restrictions. So LCD, so it has to have an x plus 1 and an x. Okay, domain restriction. What can x not be equal to? X cannot equal to a negative 1 and a 0. Okay, so I'm going to multiply everything by the LCD. So I'll multiply the 2 by the LCD of x times x plus 1. Same thing here. Let's do it on this side. X times x plus 1. I'll move that over a little bit. X times x plus 1. Same thing, x times x plus 1. All right, so now let's cancel. I can cancel here. Nothing cancels here on this first one, so it's 2x. I'm just going to put it in front here, x plus 1. Here I'm subtracting everything, but this x cancels here, x plus 1 cancels here. So I just have a minus 1. Equals, and then just this x plus 1 with this leaves me with the 3x. Okay, so now you're going to finish it, tell me what x is, and check it with your restriction, and come back and start the video again. Okay, so if you kind of see what I did, I solved for x. I got x equals negative 1/2, x equals 1. When I checked against my domain restriction, I do not have any of those two numbers, so therefore these two are my solution. Okay, let's look at number 6. All right, so in order to find the LCD here, we're going to have to factor the denominator. So let's factor this to x minus 5. And one thing nice, these kind of might give you a hint of what you should have, and x plus 2. And it doesn't always, but check those to see if those work for you before you keep trying to do a whole bunch. So let's state the LCD. LCD is everything has to be part of it. So I have an x minus 5 and an x plus 2. Okay, so I see my x minus 5 up there, I see the x plus 2, and I see both of them up there. Okay, now what is domain restriction? So what can x not equal? Well, x can't, by looking at this, x can equal 5 or negative 2. Okay, so I'll pause the video. I want you to multiply by the multiply everything by the LCD and see what you get. I'll come back. Okay, at least look at when you multiply by the LCD, this is what you should have left. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and work it right here as we distribute. So we have x squared plus 2x plus 3x minus 15 equals 7x. I'm going to combine like terms on this side. X squared plus 5x minus 15 equals 7x. So since I have a quadratic, I need to set it equal to 0. So move the 7x to the other side. Let's use a different color so we can. All right, so I get x squared minus 2x minus 15 equals 0. All right, I'm going to pause you, factor it, and see if both those answers work. Okay, so I got these two solutions, so now I'm going to check with my restriction. Well, I have a 5 up here. X can't be that 5. And this is a 5 here, so that one doesn't work. Negative 3 is okay, so my solution is only x equals negative 3. Okay, this can't work. Now this last little box here is what I kind of want to do is that you want to see remember the difference between the expressions and the equations and so forth. That might help you. You really need to pay attention to which one you're doing so that you are following the right rules for them. The best way I can say this, when you're simplifying, you want one fraction. When you're solving, you want to know what x is. Okay, so make a single fraction here. Okay, so when we do that, there's no equal sign. That's how we know it's a expression. No equal sign. What else helps us to do it? Okay, and so when we do that, think nice, it should have the word simplify. So you just simplify. So first you have to, now this one, we want to find the LCD. You must state the LCD, so please state the LCD. The LCD is, sorry, that sounds weird, LCD is 5 and x plus 7. Both of these have to be in it. Okay, so let's multiply by what we need. So I'm just going to rewrite this fraction down here so it's easier to see. So I'm going to multiply by what I need. So that I need here is an x plus 7. This is where that form of 1 comes into place. Here, all I need is a 5. Okay. So my LCD, we're just going to write LCD on the bottom of it, is x times x plus 7 plus 5 times x plus 3. So now let's clean this up, and on the top we have x squared plus 7x plus 5x plus 15 all over the LCD. And when we finish, we have, okay, so now we'll just finish this up, and we have, let's write in black, x squared plus 12x plus 15 all over the LCD of, we had up there 5 times x plus 7. Now, if we could factor the top, then we would, the numerator, and if we, to maybe cancel something out, but we cannot. This is as far as it goes. So this is our solution. Notice it's a single fraction. Okay, so now let's look at the solve. This one over here where we have an equal sign. So if you have an equation, we know it's an equation because of the equal sign, then you are going to solve. You're going to say, what is x equal to? If you have a variable at the bottom, then you'll have to also state the restriction, but we didn't have to do it when we're doing an expression. On equations, you have to. Okay? So what we're going to do here, this is going to be our cross products because they're two equal fractions. So we're going to multiply this to this and this to this. Okay, so first let's state our restriction. So I'm going, let me just write this fraction, this equation down here. The domain restriction, I look at this right here, and x cannot be a -7. That's your restriction. You must state that. So now with this one, because they're two equal fractions, I get to do that cross product. So this is going to be x times x plus 7 on one side, and then 5 times x plus 3. Notice no more fractions. Now just solve for x. So I have x squared plus 7x equals 5x plus 15. Now, since it's a quadratic, we're going to have to move everything to one side to set it equal to 0. So I'm going to subtract 5x. I'm also going to subtract 15. Minus 5x minus 15. So we have x squared. 7 minus 5 is 2, so a positive 2x. Nothing to add to that negative 15, so it's just negative 15 equals, and these cancel to a 0. Now we're going to factor. And you have to find what those x's are. So we get x plus 5 and x minus 3. So set them equal to 0. So x plus 5 equals 0. X minus 3 equals 0. So we have x equals a negative 5 and put it over here, and x equals a 3. Neither one of those is a -7, so both of these are our solution. So make sure that you see the difference between the two, okay? Make sure you're paying attention. If I'm simplifying, the best way I could say it is I'm creating a single fraction, and when I'm solving, I want to know the answer, okay?